Life in prison without parole is the sentence. Pressdee pleaded guilty to first-degree murder of 3 of her patient victims and attempting to murder 19 more patients, injecting them with overdoses of insulin. Family of victims told us,
"I'll never forgive her for what she did. We're angry and hurt that she disguised herself as a caring nurse.
She's pure evil."
Between 2020 and 2023, a registered nurse named Heather Pressdee worked at nursing homes and rehabilitation facilities across western Pennsylvania. To families of residents, she was a trusted professional tasked with protecting their most vulnerable loved ones. She administered medication, monitored vital signs, and provided comfort to elderly patients, brain injury survivors, and people in palliative care. Behind this mask of professional care was a calculated killer who used her clinical access to wage a silent war against the very patients she was sworn to protect. In May 2024, Pressdee pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder and 19 counts of attempted murder. She was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without parole, followed by an additional 380 to 760 years in prison. Her crimes resulted in at least 17 deaths and exposed massive systemic failures in healthcare regulation, revealing the terrifying ease with which a killer can operate in plain sight when institutions choose silence over accountability. Pressdee's weapon of choice left no obvious marks. It was insulin, a hormone vital for diabetic patients but a lethal poison when administered to non-diabetics or in massive doses. When she injected her victims with excessive insulin, she triggered severe hypoglycemia. Blood sugar plummeted, starving the brain of glucose and sending the body into shock. Victims lapsed into comas, suffered irreversible brain damage, or experienced prolonged seizures before their hearts stopped. Because many victims were elderly or had complex medical histories, their sudden deaths were initially attributed to natural causes. It was only after a pattern of suspicious deaths on Pressdee's shifts emerged that investigators launched a forensic audit, uncovering the horrific truth. Criminologists who study medical serial killers identify a pattern called nurse hopping. When a nurse is suspected of misconduct, institutions often force a quiet resignation rather than triggering a formal investigation that could invite regulatory scrutiny and scandal. This allows dangerous employees to secure work at the next desperate, understaffed facility. Pressdee was the ultimate beneficiary of this broken system. Between 2018 and her arrest in May 2023, she was discipline suspended, or forced to resign from approximately 10 different facilities in western Pennsylvania due to abusive behavior, insubordination, and suspicious patient interactions. Yet she continually secured new positions. Her confirmed crimes occurred across 5 facilities: Concordia at Rebecca Residence in West Deer, Belair Healthcare in Lower Burrell, Quality Life Services in Chicora, Premier Armstrong Rehabilitation and Nursing Center in Kittanning, and Sunnyview Rehabilitation and Nursing Center in Butler. At each new job, she was given immediate access to medication carts and vulnerable patients, despite a documented history that should have ended her career. The 3 victims at the center of her first-degree murder convictions were James Bartow, Nicholas Simbel, and Gerald Schrum. None were terminal. None were candidates for end-of-life care. James Bartow was 55 years old, recovering from a brain injury and making real progress in rehabilitation. On December 4, 2022, Pressdee injected him with a massive dose of insulin, despite the fact that he was not diabetic. His blood sugar crashed, causing catastrophic brain damage, and he died shortly after. His family described a gentleman with a full life ahead of him. Nicholas Simbel was 43, stable, and working hard to regain his independence after a brain injury. On May 1, 2023, Pressdee injected him with a lethal dose of insulin. He died despite emergency intervention. The loss of a 43-year-old during his own rehabilitation shocked staff and became a primary catalyst for the investigation. Gerald Schrum was 90 years old, a veteran and beloved community member. On March 25, 2023, Pressdee administered a lethal insulin dose to a man who depended entirely on his caregivers for survival. His family spoke of a lifetime of service and the profound betrayal of knowing his final hours were defined by a manufactured medical crisis. Criminologists call healthcare killers who use poison quiet killers. They exploit methods that mimic natural disease processes, making crimes nearly undetectable without specific toxicology orders. Insulin is the ideal weapon because the body produces it naturally, so its presence does not immediately raise suspicion unless a test is ordered to distinguish between insulin produced by the body and insulin injected from outside. When Pressdee injected a non-diabetic patient, she initiated a cascade that was agonizing and silent. As blood sugar dropped to near zero, the brain was starved of energy. Victims experienced anxiety, sweating, tremors, and confusion before losing consciousness. Seizures and cardiac arrhythmia followed. To an observer not looking for chemical intervention, The symptoms were almost identical to a stroke, a heart attack, or natural age-related decline. Pressdee exploited this physiological mimicry completely. When questioned after her arrest, Pressdee claimed compassion, stating she wanted to end the suffering of patients she believed had no quality of life. Criminologists call this the angel of death complex, where a killer frames themselves as a savior. Prosecutors and the families of victims rejected it entirely, pointing to her documented history of verbal abuse, workplace hostility, and disturbing comments as evidence of narcissistic control and a desire for power over life and death. Co-workers at multiple facilities reported that Pressdee had a chilling preoccupation with death. She stated that certain patients needed to die, and on several occasions predicted with eerie accuracy which resident would die on her shift. Investigators later recognized these predictions as announcements of her planned murders. Despite these warning signs, facility administrators failed to report her to the state nursing board or to law enforcement. Operating under constant financial pressure, nursing homes avoided the regulatory investigations that reporting suspicious deaths would have triggered. This institutional silence was the shield under which Pressdee selected her victims, administered lethal injections, and moved on when suspicion grew too high. The legal resolution came in May 2024 in a Butler County courtroom. To avoid the death penalty, Pressdee pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder and 19 counts of attempted murder. Family members filled the courtroom to deliver impact statements, describing birthdays and milestones their loved ones had missed, and the devastating realization that their deaths were not natural. Prosecutors highlighted how Pressdee timed her doses to coincide with the end of her shifts, ensuring the hypoglycemic events would occur when other nurses were on duty and suspicion would fall elsewhere. Judge Joseph George sentenced her to 3 consecutive life sentences, plus 380 to 760 years in prison. Under Pennsylvania law, she will die behind bars. The legacy of this case extends far beyond the sentence. Victims' families and patient advocacy groups are pushing for a centralized healthcare worker registry, requiring employers to report all disciplinary actions and suspicious patient incidents, eliminating nurse hopping entirely. They are also advocating for mandatory toxicology testing in any unexplained death at a long-term care facility, removing the default assumption of natural death. 17 people lost their lives because the system failed to connect the dots. The Pressdee case is a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities in our healthcare system and the critical need for oversight, transparency, and accountability. It asks whether we are doing enough to protect those who cannot protect